Prayer is the topic of today to discuss. And I think it's an apt topic with all the pandemic going around the world, especially, and many families in India are getting affected. And let's all send our prayers to them. And for myself, it has been very hectic last 4 days because my parents and my brother's family was affected by COVID. So it's a tough situation everywhere. So, probably this is the first time, I added this Zoom background, and it's in the cave looking outside. If you look my backside of it, it's reminded me this idea. When we are enclosed, we are looking towards the openness. When we are in openness, we are looking towards the enclosure. This paradox, happens all the time. We are always looking in the opposite direction. And Babaji also said, in Complete Works, there is this about inanimation and animation. When we are in the state of inanimate, we are moving towards the animated state. When we are in the animated state, we are always looking towards the inanimate state, a blissful state, a peaceful state, whatever you want to call it. Thoughtless, which is a fancy thing. When we meditate, we want to become thoughtless. So we are always, because why do we want to become thoughtless? Because my mind is rattling continuously all the time, going everywhere in all directions. I have no control over it. And obviously we look forward towards a thoughtful state, assuming that the thoughtful state is a very blissful state. And thoughtless state does happen in meditation. But when the thoughtless state happens, the mind is automatically looking towards the thoughtful state again, the opposite. And it immediately, get back into a thought state. So it is toggling between thought and thoughtless. So when it is in thought, it is looking for thoughtless. When it is in thoughtless, it is looking for thought. You see, and why, we wonder, why am I not, continuously being in that thoughtless state while meditating? Because we are always looking in the opposite direction. Right. All right, so let's get started. I think we have enough members joined already. I found this on the internet, what you see on the screen. My soul, listen unto me. Love your Lord as a fish loves water. The more the water, the greater the joy, greater the tranquility of its body and mind. So the question is, does really the fish loves the water, or the water is the base for fish's existence? And do we call that love? So here, even though this ultimate, what we call the God or godly essence, is also base of our life, once we don't realize that without that base, I cannot exist at all. We don't realize that. That's why we think of love as an emotion which I need to put on this Lord, God, so that I'll attain him. But then we need to really understand what that love means. I'll just start with the question with no answer in my own heart, but I'm putting the question out there. All right, ignorance is bliss. We all heard this statement many times. But what is the gecko doing here? So recently, one of my friend moved to Florida, and he calls me one in the night, past midnight. He calls me. I asked him, "Are you okay?" And he said, there is a lizard in my room, in my bedroom, and he's scared. And then I said, "Is it a gecko? Looks like a small one." He said, "Yes." And Floridians would laugh at him. But fears are fears. I said, "Ignore it. Just go to sleep. You'll be all right. It doesn't do any harm. It doesn't do anything." Then he said, "What if it crawls into my bed? Because I just moved in. I don't have a real bed. I'm sleeping on the floor, on the carpet. What if it gets into my bed?" Right? So I said, "Just hold it and throw it out." But he could not do it. He was sitting all night. Had he not known that the gecko was in his room, he would have slept happily, right? Isn't it? The moral of the story here is, if he had not known this gecko is there, he would have slept happily. But the gecko is there, now he has to do something about it. So until I am ignorant, I can do whatever. I'm free to do whatever. But when I know the truth, I cannot ignore it anymore. I have to do something about it. That is why, conveniently, we always run away from the truth. We pay a blind side to it. Because we know once we find the truth, I have to do something about it. See, I'm very careful about the words I'm using. I said, if you find the truth, I'm not saying you are going to find the truth and I'm going to tell the truth on this session. So if you find the truth, you have to do something about it. And spiritual practice is all about knowing this, understanding this, and doing something about it. But how the truth happens? It just happens. You don't work for it. It just happens. If you are paying attention and open, it happens. Prayer is communication. With what? It can range from the superficial to the profound. It can be a simple conversation. It can evolve to progressively deeper levels of communication. And eventually, it can become a state of communion. Very beautiful definition. I have not seen such a wonderful definition which covers all aspects of prayer. Every aspect of prayer you can think of is in these 4 sentences. So let's discover each aspect, and then we can come back to the sentence and see if we fully understand the sentence. So my whole discussion today is around this. So then I said, okay, when we talk about prayer, why only talk about heartfulness prayer? Let's explore. Let's understand what other spiritual systems. I consider every religious system as a spiritual system. Let's look into other spiritual systems and see what they say about it. So what is prayer according to the Bible? You will also realize pretty much every system is saying the same. There's absolutely no difference when it's come to this higher essence. So again, you see prayer is loving communication with God. Daji started with prayer as communication. Prayer is the expression of inner spiritual needs. This is a very important statement. Prayer is the expression of inner spiritual needs. And through prayer, we can find strength of spirit guidance wisdom, joy, and inner peace. And you can see the references here from the Bible. And prayer may be long, short, or in a group, silent or aloud, but it should be a true communication with God and not done for public recognition. Important aspects of prayer include, again, expression of faith and trust in God, confession, whatever that confession is, sin or virtue, doesn't matter. Praise of God's mighty deeds. We'll also touch on this aspect, why praise God. Thanksgiving for all the good things we have received, dedication to serve God, request for our needs and the needs of the others. And if you see, I mean, the Christianity in some way, lives true to its statements, the request, I mean, serve people. And most of the service organizations are across the world are, any Red Cross societies and many societies across the world, hospitals are established by these Christian organizations. They're doing immense service across the globe. And Jesus spent a lot of time praying. He often went to a solitary place and prayed for hours at a time, especially at difficult times in his ministry. You see, Jesus himself also prayed, and you will also see the same references in Heartfulness. Whenever we go to the guide master and we present our problem, he will say, I'll pray for you. So the prayer has an immense, it's very potent. And without prayer, the things won't move towards the higher state in our lives, in any mundane situation to a higher situation. That's why, again, if I go back to this Daji statement, it says it can evolve it to progressively deeper levels of communication. It starts as a mundane aspect, but it evolves. What is prayer according to Hinduism? Because Hinduism is, it has its own multi faces. There's a lot of paraphernalia of things in the Hinduism, different systems within Hinduism, different aspects within Hinduism, different beliefs within Hinduism, and different theologies within Hinduism. That's why it becomes very broad when we just call it Hinduism. A broader statement, much broader statement of Hinduism is not a religion, it's a principle, it's a way of life. It never considered itself as a religion. But now, it kind of, people perceive it as a religion, but it was never a religion. So what Hinduism, or this principle of eternal life, you call it Sanatana Dharma, what it believes in is everything. You approach this God in any which way you want, you will reach it there. So that's why a Christian is a Hindu, a Muslim is a Hindu, a Jew is a Hindu, a theist is a Hindu, and an atheist is a Hindu. Everyone is a Hindu. Even the non-believer is a Hindu. A believer is a Hindu. So that's why it did not discriminate any aspects of this approach, right? Just like in the mathematics, you prove it is not equal to, and then if it is proven wrong, then it is equal to. You do vice versa. Similarly, an atheist, a non-believer, if he non-believe it to such an extent, at some point his non-belief will prove wrong or right, then he'll find the way. Right? So that's what in a nutshell, what Hinduism is all about. So here they have given different aspects, different ways to pray. to invoke gods or various supernatural powers for the welfare, just like Vedic hymns. So here, in Vedic hymns, they're very particular about how you pronounce that hymn, or even in the Vedic mantras, the pronunciation is given utmost importance. And they say if you pronounce it wrong, that prayer will have harmful effects. And the prayer extols virtues and potencies of various gods, goddesses. It's basically bhajans, praise the Lord. Do you see here? Praise the Almighty, praise the God Almighty's deeds. Same thing here is happening. We are praying and praying and praying and praising the Lord. Now, to cut it short, now coming to the heartfulness prayer. What is prayer according to heartfulness? We already heard some of it in Taj's definition, but let's explore further. Prayer is a call from nature within to nature outside for the fulfillment of a need which the self is not consciously aware. You see, the self is not aware, but the need exists. So in another terms, the prayer is a way for the self to identify that need. This is a very important sentence. I mean, I want everyone to pay attention and think about it and question it in your mind. So nature within to the nature outside. Why within and without? This is a broader concept again, nature within and nature outside. What is this nature within is referring to, and what is this nature outside is referring to? We'll talk about it more on that. So I mean, when the presentation is over, I don't want any loose ends. If I'm leaving anything, please, at the end of the session or even during the session, please do ask the question and correct me. If we view prayer in this light, then we find the idea of asking or begging for something generally associated with prayer no longer exists. So there is one aspect of asking, I would like to talk about. Suppose if you give someone to something, you just give, you feel as if your heart is expanding when you are giving. You feel that generosity in your system. It's expanding. But look at it this way: when you are receiving, your body contracts. You go, you like that receiving aspect makes the system contract automatically. So that means you, or some way you become very constricted. That openness is gone in us. So that is why there has to be much more generosity in receiving also, just like we are giving. That is a very important aspect in the prayer. We don't have to shrink while receiving. Especially when we were kids, right? When our parents are giving us something, we kind of take it with such a passion as if that is already mine. So even the idea of receiving is not there in that moment. So we should receive in the same way here. And how do we receive in prayer? We'll talk about it. recognition of the inner need is one important aspect of prayer when it comes to heartfulness. Then you might ask, how can I pray without recognizing this need? How can I pray if there is no need for me to pray? And then how is this recognition happening as an act of prayer, as this practice of prayer? How is it happening? Let's try to understand that aspect. And this request which we are putting in front of this Almighty or the ultimate essence has to be very subtle. And the subtle, why it has to be subtle, has two aspects to it. When it comes to the prayer, I'll talk about it. With the attitude of receiving. So when I ask for something, I must receive it, right? I cannot just ask and leave it. That is one of the biggest drawbacks in repeated asking. We'll talk about it. I'm just making some statements here so that that creates some discussion points. And trust me, I'm creating all these statements as I'm reading it. I don't even know that I'm going to bring these questions forward. So I'm also listening to it myself for the first time. Utter the request with a very subtle supposition. We already said subtle, but I repeated it because there are two aspects to it. Recognize this principle to which this request is submitted. So who are we submitting this request to? And then again, I have to wait to receive. So if I shrink, I cannot receive. So the receiving is also a certain attitude. And that is also very important. All right. So please think about it if any questions come to your mind as we proceed. Make a note of it, ask anytime you like. Or I'll open to everyone at the end of this session for question and answers. Hopefully, I'll not go around and waste the time so that we don't lose any more time. All right. So let's talk about other aspects. What is prayer according to heartfulness? So what happens in the heartfulness? We start our day with the prayer, don't we? And we say the prayer once. We say the prayer once in the morning with a heartfelt or a heart full of love and devotion. You will hear this word love again and again and again. And this love needs to be understood thoroughly. What is devotion? What is love? Before starting meditation. So after having said the prayer in the morning, we say it again only at night before going to bed, before sleeping. The prayer is repeated 2 or 3 times and we meditate on the meaning of the prayer. So you will see these instructions vary, 2 or 3 times, once. But if I can say once and if I feel complete in myself, time is enough, if not repeat it one more time. Even I would say third time is not required. So please ignore the 3 times here. We meditate on the meaning of the prayer. When we repeat the prayer next morning, we thus continue to be in the state of that connectedness. So what is happening here? I go to bed with with the idea of this prayer, and then we go sleep. with a prayerful mind, and then we slip into that sleep. That means almost my entire sleep becomes like meditation. When I get up, we get up with the same state of mind. So two things I would like to share here. Once I was in California. So this was a hospital setup. I have been there, and then, to give sessions to one of the staff at the hospital. And she said, oh, I'm practicing this meditation for almost 30 years, heartfulness, but I'm never regular. Can you please tell me how I can become regular in my meditation? Then I asked her, have you ever asked yourself why you are not regular in your meditation? She said, no. See, the thing is, have you ever skipped your meal? Have you ever skipped anything which you have to do during the day, which is essential to yourself? There are many essential activities we perform other than just eating, right? And did we ever skip any of that activity, even though you are not disciplined? The answer is no. And then the question is, why didn't you skip any meditation? Skip any meal. Why didn't you skip any meal? Because the need kicks in. I'm hungry. I have to take my meal. So unless this inner need is not recognized, we cannot attend to it. So that's why spiritual practice is not discipline at all. Spiritual practice is all about fulfilling this need. Just like how we are fulfilling all our other needs, which we recognize, which we feel very tangibly. Number one. So I said, how do I recognize that need? How do I create that need? So I told her, forget about all the aspects of practice. Every day, keep an alarm before you go to bed. If you have a bedtime is fixed, clean yourself and then do the prayer. Just do the prayer and wait for that prayer to reveal for something. Wait for 10 minutes and go back to sleep. Just sleep. And then you will see automatically your entire practice is regular and will become regular. Then you'll never ever have to complain about you not being regular in your practice just by doing the prayer. So to me, what is the beginning of my practice is my bedtime prayer. Do it. And then I'll tell you my experience. For last 6 months, 7 months, I got addicted to these computer games. So I'm playing bridge. Those who don't know that it's a bridge is a cards game. It's like a chess game of the cards. And these are like apps, these are interactive apps, right? So you're playing with anybody who is online. You're playing with real people, not with the computer. And I do the prayer. My mind becomes so compulsive to start my phone and start playing the bridge. I play the bridge. Guess what happens? Without my knowledge, without even thinking, the first thing I do is when I get up, even before going to the restroom, I open my phone. I just turn on the bridge app on my phone, and I was not I was not even thinking of playing. It is just intuitive. It just happens. It's like as if it's a muscle reflex, mental reflex. I turn on that app in the morning, and this continued for last 6 months. I'm sort of confessing here on the call. And I said, okay, this has gone too much. So now I'm basically, my prayer is not effective anymore. So 4 days back, I deleted the app from my phone. Every 15 minutes, I'm having, as if, my nerves are like going to bulge, and break. That's the kind of feeling I'm having. It's like, as Daji says, it's like a dopamine withdrawal. I'm literally experiencing it, what Daji said. I'm having those withdrawal symptoms. And my hands went back to the app, not the app, even the app store, to reinstall it back. So far, I did not play, but 4 times I installed it and deleted it. You see, just by doing that activity right before sleep made such an impact on me. So imagine what impact it would make if I do make that last activity as my prayer. What happens when you get up in the morning? It's as if, like I said, muscle reflex, mental reflex. You get up and meditate. That becomes your first activity of the day without your knowledge. Okay. So think about it. Now, this is, I'm giving you a first-hand experience by doing something else other than meditation. And we have all been doing something else other than prayer before we sleep. And you might have also observed that becomes your first activity, what you left before sleep. I'm sure you all would have observed it. So this is very, very essential to make my last activity as prayer. And that prayer is not like, we have to do with, half asleep. At least we should be mentally awake. So plan it right before your bedtime or a little ahead of your bedtime. Then go back to that sleep with that idea. So it is, now you learned the truth, you cannot ignore it. So ignorance is not bliss anymore. So it is not necessary to say the prayer at any other time during the day. Repeating something leads to a form of grossness. You see, a lot of times, when especially, coming from this Hindu background, we have this habit of repeating, whether it's a mantra, what you call it. What is mantra is, like the Veda describes, manatrayate itihi mantra, means that which holds the mind. But mantra is also, how did mantra came up into the existence? It came up into the existence when a seer, a saint, in his meditative state, what he experienced, he gave a verbal form to it. And that verbal form became a mantra. Now, what we are trying to do is take the verbal form to experience what the saint has experienced. And because we don't have the patience to experience what the saint has experienced after saying the mantra, we keep on repeating it so that it might, bring that effect in us, which is an important thing to learn and realize here. So what is happening is that repetition, you're caught with the words, you're caught up with the sound. So all these words, sound, are all, those who understood heartfulness literature, and also those who have understood, the deep, the other spiritual practices, know that this sound and words are in the grosser form because it created certain vibration. It is of a lower form than the essence. So when the mind is subjected to the lower form, the mind gets tuned to that lower form of vibration. That's why we call it grossness. So that by repetition, when we are touching upon the subtle aspects, is all about waiting. That's how we wait and let it happen. We just say it once because we need to give that direction to the mind. That's why we say it once and then we wait. And to me, that is also the definition of meditation. So the prayer is not to be repeated before individual sittings or satsangs. Satsang is a group meditation. Individual sessions are, when you go to the individual sessions with the trainer, why a prayer is not to be repeated is a question. I leave the question here and then we'll try to answer this towards the end of the session because I want to get into the prayer. I think we are doing very good on time so far. And the same thing, we do not, sorry, some alignment is gone here, but we can still read it. We do not chant the prayer like a mantra, but instead remain in state of prayer even while continuing the day's duties. Once we were with Chariji, someone asked, "What is prayer?" His immediate answer was, "Prayer is way of life." So when it's a way of life, you cannot slice it into a certain time period, before bedtime, after bedtime, during sittings, after sittings, like that. So in order for the prayer to continue, that expression to continue, that communion to continue, that communication to continue, it has to be extended throughout the day. So we try to remain in that state so that we can extend the prayer throughout the day, so that we can make it a way of life or an expression of life. And one can try, everyone can try, and see how it changes your daily aspects of life. We pray to him alone who is the master in the real sense of the term. We have no need to pray for material benefits except when peace of mind is greatly disturbed for want of bare necessities. Whatever our problem, we can mentally hand it over to the master and surrender to the result to him. This is a very important sentence here. Surrender the result to him. What does it mean? I'm pausing here so that the question will sink in. We can mentally hand it over to the master and surrender the results to him. What does it mean, really? It really means many things. I'll give you an example. A lot of times what happens is when we say the prayer, when we say the prayer, we put the problem before the Lord and we also put the solution before the Lord. Hey, my boss is troubling me at the office, Lord, please make sure he gets fired. We have a solution also. That means we don't have the patience for the Lord to do something about it. We already put the solution out there. So the moment you put the solution out there, the prayer, the essence of the prayer is almost nullified. It has no effect. All that I need is put the prayer and wait for him to do whatever. Maybe instead of firing your boss, he'll give him a promotion and your boss will move to the next job. Who knows? Right? Or maybe you get a promotion and you will move to the next job. Who knows? So we don't know how it will be answered, but we have to wait. But you already found a solution. Fire him. You see how our prayers become unanswered? You already know the solution. There is no need for Lord to provide you any guidance or solution. This is the important aspect. This is what really surrender here means. We and again understand this aspect of surrender in very different ways. I'll touch upon this aspect of surrender maybe almost in every other session we are going to have in the in next for a few weeks. And today is the fourth or third session. We're going to have 4 more sessions. So please do try to participate. So we're going to touch upon the surrender aspect again and again until we understand. So in this particular context, surrender is again, you wait for the Lord to guide you in the way apt for that situation. So, and in the Lord's grace and mercy and love, no one is unharmed. Maybe, but in our lowness, we want other people to be harmed. You see the grace here, and you see the glory of the prayer, and you see the glory of this aspect of surrender. Just by waiting, putting the problem out there without solution, it will happen. This is a very, very, very important aspect of the prayer. I probably will say the same thing for every statement I'm going to make. And this signifies we accept. I mean, that means we accept the outcome. Even in the Indian scriptures, they always say, leave the results to him. You do your duty, but leave the results to him. And that is exactly what we are talking about, how you can leave the results to him. You put forth what is needed and you wait for it to happen. So if we understand that aspect of the prayer, then our prayer becomes more effective. There is a big difference between repeating the prayer and being in a state of prayer. We can always try to be in state of prayer. What is here? What happens if I remain in the state of the prayer? And what happens if I repeat it? I'll give you a very, very simple, a mundane example. You call your friend and you want to invite your friend to dinner this weekend. You call your friend, my friend, I would like you to come to my place for dinner this weekend. And before your friends say yes, then I'll say, my friend, please come to the dinner this weekend. And before he say yes, again I'll say, please, my friend, come to the dinner at this weekend. What's happening? After 4 minutes, 5 minutes, the friend will say, have you gone mad? What's wrong with you? You're not allowing me even to speak and you keep on repeating the same thing. So what's happening here is when I say the prayer, again, what is prayer? Expression of the need. When I express my need, I wait for the prayer to be answered. That means I go into a meditative state. Waiting means meditative state. So the instructions are very clear in our heartfulness prayer. Say the prayer mentally once or twice, then wait. Then wait for it says wait for the meaning of the prayer. But here, what is the meaning? I mean, even if I understand the meaning, what does it mean really? So here I'm realizing that need. That's why prayer makes us realize the need. In that waiting, it happens. And it also it tells us what are the means to achieve that need and how that can be fulfilled. That means I am in total state of receiving. Now, in this, because I'm in a meditative state, I'm not shrinking like, when I beg and receive. I'm generously waiting. I'm generously receiving with its with my own full potential and with Lord's full potential. Then I become a capable entity to receive. Then I become a capable entity to give it back. And then I become a much more capable entity to pray. So this is the general understanding of the attitude and how I'm going to pray. And then what is the prayer look like? Most of you know it already. It says, "O Master, thou art the real goal of human life. We are yet but slaves of wishes putting bar to our advancement. Thou art the only God and power to bring us up to that stage." And lot of times, many times, all the masters pretty much so far have to explain and justify this "O Master" term. Babuji said there is only one master, which is God. Then the question came, then why didn't you say "Oh God" instead of "Oh Master"? I mean, why are you saying "Oh Master"? And this was explained in many ways, so I just try to summarize my own understanding here. I tried to do some animation, it didn't happen properly. So, "Oh Master," who is this master we are talking about? If you see here, I have two squares, rather two pictures. An incarnated being, divine principle. When these two come together, what is called is master. An incarnated being alone cannot be a master. A divine principle alone cannot be a master. If I call the divine principle as God, and God alone not be a master. So this aspect we need to understand. The term master, what we mean master. So this incarnated being merged with the divine principle is master. Very good. And who is not in oneness with the divine principle? The divine principle is there in everyone. Then why can't I be called as master? Question, it's a silly question, but it's a question. There are no silly questions. Think about it. But anyway, to explain this divine principle and master, to qualify my statement, a divine principle alone cannot be the master. Incarnated being alone cannot be the master. Both have to be together. I'm just repeating myself. Just like an example, on Earth, what is the common principle is the gravity. Where does the gravity exist? It's all pervading the Earth. The gravity is no different from here or China or India or any other place, correct? What is the value of the gravity if there is no Earth there? Can I experience that gravity without Earth, without being, without my base? So there has to be a base for me to experience this gravity. So this base here is that incarnated being with the divine principle in it. It's like the Earth with the gravity in it. Then the gravity makes sense to me, right? But I am hoping I am making sense to you. If there is no earth, what does the gravity has to do anyway? I mean, at least for me, the gravity might have its own role to play without the earth, but for me, there is no role of the gravity without the earth. That is why Kabir beautifully said, Guru Govind means the God and my teacher are standing next to each other. Which one should I worship? Not exactly worship, which one, whose feet I should be touching. Kake lagu paam. Guru Govind dono khade, kake lagu paam. Means the God and the incarnated teacher is standing next to each other. Whose feet I should be touching? So this is the whole aspect of master. Master is these two things put together. That means for me to experience that principle, I need that base. That is why we are praying to this master. See, one of my friend, he wanted to just explore heartfulness. So I gave him this basic books which says, meditation, cleaning, prayer, universal prayer, things like that. A basic book which contains the practices. He said, you know what, I'm only interested in meditation. I don't like this cleaning part and the meditation part. I mean the cleaning and the prayer part. I like to do meditation. I said, that's a very good thought, but look at it this way. You want to play a soccer game and you say, I want to play a soccer match, but I only want to hit the goals on towards my goal post, not the opponent's goal post. Okay. So what is this opponent's post? That is the game. So I have to take the ball to the opponent's post and kick the ball. But what will happen if I do the put it on my side of the goal? I get disqualified. So I have to play the game the way it should be played, and it has to be complete. It has certain process. It has certain rules. So I said you cannot choose to play a part game. You can try it, but that doesn't give you the fulfillment of the playing the entire game. So if you think this spiritual practice as a game, and this game has three elements, or 3.1 elements, or 3.5 elements, or 4 elements, you have to follow all those 4 elements to have to play the complete game. But it's a choice one has to make by themselves. Number one. Then I said, okay, I'll do the cleaning. But why this prayer? Why can't I do some other prayer? My religion has different prayers. Why can't I do that? I said, no one is stopping you to do your other religious prayers. But again, the same thing, it's a game. You have to do it. So you cannot bring a basketball to a soccer game, nor a tennis ball to a soccer game. You try to kick tennis balls. How many times you are hurt your feet? You will only know. So a game has to be played the way it is designed to play. You can bring a tennis ball and say, I'll play a soccer game. Be my guest. You're going to hurt your feet. A tennis ball has to be played with the racket, not with you cannot kick the ball. A soccer ball has to be played like a soccer. You have to kick the soccer ball. A basketball has to be played with hands. Try kicking the basketball, see what happens to your feet. But if you, hey, I want to play soccer, I want to play basketball, that's great, fine, play both the games. I want to do my religious prayers and I also want to do the heartfulness prayer. Please do it. No harm done. Pick one game and play it to complete and understand all the aspects of that game. And if you see a lot of benefit on it, continue it. So again, this master, oh, I only believe Jesus is my master. Fine. When you say master, put Jesus there. This incarnated being, who is a Jesus anyway? Incarnated being with the divine principle. Oh no, I like Buddha. Fine. Replace Buddha with the master, the incarnated being with the divine principle in it. It's the same thing. The divine principle is common. This incarnated being probably is, there are variations. Someone likes Krishna, someone likes Allah, and someone who is, who truly adopts this heartfulness practice will say Daji is my master, which is also fine. But the key thing is to adapt the way it is designed so that you get the full benefit out of it. So I hope this covers the aspect of master. And someone, I think Nuri said, the Kabir had no guru. And I think it is kind of said it like that, but the great thing about Kabir is, anyone who taught him, he placed him on the guru's role. That's why he put many of them together and said, all of them as are my gurus, and then he clubbed them and said one guru. That's why he came up with this Guru Govind. Guru and the Lord are standing next to each other, right? So there's another question I'm reading, what exactly it means by worshiping, what all it comprises. The Doha from Kabir you mentioned only talks about touching the feet. Is that all? That's how he put it. That means touching the feet is to whom I should pay the respects. And this, and thank you for asking that question, Rishabh. I'm going to explain on the next aspect of the prayer. That's a very apt question to go switch to the next line. Let's switch to the next line again. Thou art the real goal of human life. What am I saying here? You are the goal. That means for me to become this incarnated being combined with this divine principle, exactly how it is reflecting the master state, my state also should exactly reflect the same way. Can't I make it happen? Sorry, my apologies for the wrong question. Why? So the question here is, this is basically saying, or this is a statement of recognizing the purpose of my life. Why I have to be one like him, or why I have to reach that goal, why I have to reach that state. This is not a question of why. It is not the question of whether I want it or not. It is the question of the life itself, the inner need of the life, the inner need, the inner life. That's why that's, in that statement, the inner nature talking to the outer nature. Even though this outer nature is all pervasive, the inner nature is longing to become that omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient nature. That's the reason it has manifested into a life, to make that evolution happen in itself. So that's why it is already, that goal is already set. The life is approaching towards it. But what we do is we willfully turn it away because all other things we learn during our life, all our desires, all our uh, what do you say, simple goals we set it for ourselves in this life, which are very mundane, which are very tangible, and we ignore this bigger goal. Does that mean I should not achieve my simple goals? By all means, you should achieve all your simple goals. But at the same time, we should also participate in this real goal, which my life itself is this longing. So when I don't participate, what happens is, it's like this, you have certain need and it is not fulfilled. What happens? I'm thirsty and I don't have a drop of water to drink. What will happen? My system goes out of balance. Similarly, because we are not participating willfully in this inner need, which it is expressing in many ways, if you don't participate in it, unknowingly, our life goes out of balance. And we wonder why it is going out of balance, and we try to bring it back to balance with many things. And that many things could be anything. Ultimately, the life ends without fulfilling its purpose, and we have to try again and again in next life and next life and next life, if one believes in reincarnation. So that's why this aspect becomes very important. Thou art the real goal of human life. So let me fulfill this my real goal, for this life is given to me. And our teachers have said, this prayer is nothing but statement of facts. We are reminding. In a way, by saying this, I'm recognizing this need of the life. Earlier, we made this statement, through the prayer, we realize the need. This statement is making us realize that need. Thou art the real goal of human life. We are yet but slaves of wishes, putting bar to our advancement. What does this mean? And those of you heard before this, probably you heard me saying this same example many times, but I don't mind repeating it here again. Sometimes when you meet your friends, okay, who met with some accident that morning, you call them or you go in person and meet them. The first statement you will hear from your friend, I knew this was going to happen. How many times have you heard it? Or how many times you have said it? Something went wrong and you always said, oh, I knew this was going to happen. How did you know? How did you know that what is going to happen in the future? And why only you knew the bad things which were happening in the future? Why not good things? But nevertheless, if you dig deep into this aspect, how did you knew before it happened? Your mind, your inner being thought about it. Means it was a very subtle wish the inner has expressed, and that wish is fulfilled by the nature. So like this, because the mind thinks always the negative aspects, because it is switching between the positive and negative. Sometimes it is wishing some few positive aspects. Sometimes, because we can pay very much attention to the negative things, the negative things come to the surface, and that's how we know. And all the negative wishes are also fulfilled, because a wish is not a desire. We should not think of wish as a desire. A wish is the most subtlest expression of your heart. for something to happen or to have something. And you will see the same principle in that book called Secret. It keeps on saying you desire it deep, but if you desire it deep, its nature has no wish to provide it. When that wish becomes very subtle, it becomes more potent, and the nature has to fulfill it. And most of the time, our wishful thinking is against our evolution. And that is why my wishes are putting bar to our advancement. This statement, I'll tell you, is a very profound statement in a sense. By just submitting all my wishes to this principle, higher principle called master, all my wishes are nullified so that they don't become a bar to my advancement anymore. I mean, think of this situation. We all watch movies. In a movie, a hero or a heroine or someone is driving in the car. If that drive was shown for more than 2 minutes, what is the first thought comes to your mind? Oh, some accident is going to happen. Some bomb is going to explode. Our minds are tuned that way. I don't know about you, but at least my mind is tuned that way. Something has to happen. When I lived in Charlotte for almost 14 years, there, right next to our house, there is a car racing. And I asked one of my friends, why people are so crazy about car racing. He never missed any race, right? And he said, the most interesting part in the car racing when the crash happens. All the guys who are looking at the car race, waiting for the crash to happen. See how our minds are working. We're always, because the nature of the mind is gravitated towards the lower things, because it is not trained to gravitate towards the higher things. And because it gravitated towards the lower aspects of life, it is always wishing for something against our evolution. That's why it is becoming a very difficult aspect for us to participate in this higher evolution, mainly because of this reason. So my wishes are putting bar to the advancement. The moment I utter it with that subtle supposition to this Lord, principle, master, all those wishes are nullified instantly. But I have 24 more hours to lead my life, and I'll bring all those wishes back. So I have to nullify it again every day, in every prayer. And slowly, when the mind orients towards the higher, then my wishes become ennobling. This sentence automatically, when you say it in your mind, it becomes so subtle, it almost non-existing. And a lot of times people ask me, how do I know I'm progressing in heartfulness? This is one of the measure. A lot of times we say, oh, I'm in 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, so I'm progressing. But to me, this is the real measure. When I say thou art the real goal of human life, how much I mean that this has to be my goal? How much I really mean? Do I mean it? Do I say it because it is one of the sentences in the prayer? So when I say with that, if I feel that intensity to reach that goal, that craving, whatever it is you call it, when I feel that necessity, when I feel the need, I've already made a lot of progress. number one. And it nullifies, and the subtlety, when it's exactly, the second sentence is exactly opposite of that intensity. When the intensity in the sentence is almost becomes zero, I'm already progressed. Now coming to the third statement, thou art the only God and power. Is God not power? Why do they need to say God and power? And this requires some explanation. Why do they say God and power? Let's go back to this example. Probably I have to bring this to an edit mode. An incarnated being, what does this incarnated being possess? Intellect. Discernment, which is also in Sanskrit is known as viveka. And wisdom. These all three, this pertain to a human life. When I say happy, when I say sad, when I say I'm in trouble, when I say I'm in great stress, suffering, the principal has no understanding of what all those terms mean. If you say suffering, the principal being an omniscient, it says I'm also in suffering. If you say happiness, I'm also in happiness. If you say in pain, I'm also in pain. So the divine principle doesn't have that discriminative abilities. The only intellect has the discriminative ability. And intellect has, based on its discriminative abilities, it can discern. Like the, fight or flight situation. If you look at an ant or a mosquito, you swat it and kill the mosquito. But imagine if you walk in front of a lion, you don't want to swat the lion. You will run away. So that next action, the intellect will say, this is a mosquito, this is a lion. And this discernment say, hey, lion can kill you, run away. And wisdom gives the energy, strength to run away. That means it can understand, these three qualities can understand a human situation. And divine principle connected with consciousness. I can never spell consciousness right one time. First go. Fine. The consciousness. So this is the bridge. That's why in Sanskrit, we are going to talk again, bring this topic of consciousness in our next sessions. But understand this consciousness is an inner bridge between this incarnate being and the divine principle within. So when you put these together, the capacity to deal with the situation, alter the situation, comes through this divine principle into this incarnated being, so that my prayers can be answered. So what is God here? The principle. What is the power here? The intellect, discernment, wisdom, and the state of consciousness. When these two combine together, they have the capacity to push me to this higher state. That is why it says, thou art the only God and power to bring me up to that stage, bring us up to that stage. So now the question here is, if you see here, everything is in a plural sentence. There is no singular. It doesn't say bring me up to that stage, bring us up to that stage. We are yet but slaves. Thou art the real goal. And thou is a plural, you. You see, all the sentences are, the subject here is plural. Why it is plural? Why is it not singular? So our next aspect of the practice also tells us why it is plural, why it not single, which is universal prayer. But before I switch to the universal prayer, I would like to give some time for anyone to ask questions. No questions is good. We can finish the topic on time. All right. So if you unmute yourself, if you have a question, or put it on the chat. So then one question I see here is, why don't we say in the last sentence as a request, bring me up to that stage? It is a request. And that's a very good question. So that brings another aspect of the sentence here. Bring us up to that stage. It is a request. But we cannot even call it as a request, because the moment we recognize this highest principle with that capacity, it is an automatic assumption that it will happen, but I am sort of go into a surrender state at the time. So I go into a receive mode at that time. Since I'm already in the receiving mode, the asking sort of drops from that statement. The asking aspect drops from that statement. And that is the reason why we read that prayer here is not at all begging, because the moment I go and ask for it, that aspect drops, because I've already moved into a state of surrender, recognizing this highest entity, what we call master. Hope that answers the question. But thank you for bringing it up. That's why in our heartfulness, the prayer is not begging, because even before I asked for it, I moved into a surrender state. So now coming to the aspect of universal prayer. Why is it called a universal prayer, and why it has to be done? So on a larger scale, on a bigger picture, though we talk as if we are progressing, we are evolving, but you see the principle is the same behind all of us. We are all subject to the same principle. That brings us this universal brotherhood. This brotherhood is not just a sentiment or an emotion. It is a real statement. Just like I say, this is my hand. This entire brotherhood is also mine. This entire existence is also part of mine, as much as this hand is part of mine. If a small cut, I run for a band-aid and put it on the hand. Don't you do that? Why? Because it's your hand, because it's you, it's part of you. It's part and parcel of very much of your existence. So when you look at this broader aspect of life, everything is part of me and I am part of everything. So it's just that this evolution is not just for me. See, imagine one of my hand is growing and another hand is shrinking. Is it a healthy state? Not really, right? So the growth has to be equal. And imagine the same way, my leg, one of the leg is growing and another leg is shrinking. I cannot even walk. I stumble. So unless without this universal, I mean, all existence is evolving, my evolution has no meaning at all. Absolutely no meaning. So now you understand the importance of the universal prayer. We are not trying to be generous. We are attending to ourselves in the universal prayer. I'm attending to more of myself in the universal prayer than the prayer bedtime we do. That is why even the bedtime prayer is also in the plural fashion, because this bringing us up to that stage that us includes me and everyone, because it includes both my hands, both my legs. That means it includes me and everything else, both in the universal prayer and also in the bedtime prayer. That is why the universal prayer becomes at most important to do. We are not doing any favor for anybody here. We are doing the favor for ourselves. So that's why it says, stop whatever your activities are at 9 p.m. That means stop it. That's it. I mean, don't do anything. My bridge game is no more important. Do the 9 p.m. prayer. Whatever the activity you're doing, stop it. And meditate for 15 minutes, thinking that with that idea. Thinking means put that idea, put that supposition in your meditation, in that 15-minute meditation, saying that all the brothers and sisters are being filled with love and devotion. The real faith is growing stronger in them. So when the faith and this love grows stronger in them, they recognize this need to be one with that ultimate. They recognize the need of this evolution, including myself, not only everybody else. So this is, don't think of this prayer as for somebody else. It's an inclusive concept, because me and this entire existence is not separate. It's the same body, same incarnated body. If you bring that idea aspect into this universal prayer, then you will appreciate it much more. You will understand the importance of it. If that evolution is not happening in this entire existence and my evolution has no meaning, that is why you see all these whispers, Babuji and all the Lalaji and all the hierarchy of the masters, Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, Vivekananda, so many, I mean, innumerable. We only know few names and we think we are very knowledgeable about that subject. So many masters are working through us when we say this prayer, so that that harmony, that evolution happens in this entire existence, so that all of us can go and merge into this ultimate principle. Until then, there is no mergence for anybody. The real yoga is not happening until everything merges into it. Since we talk about this yoga as a concept of becoming one with God, it is not happening. Who has to become one with God? The entire existence, not you, not Babuji, not Lalaji. So that's why this universal prayer itself has so much importance, and one must do. And that this kind of emphasis was not there for any aspect of the practice. One must do. You will not find it for any other aspects of the practice. That's why I hope I am kind of making sense and you understand and realize the importance of this universal prayer. And it shall be immense value to them. Immense value to them is it's a third person we are talking about. It immense value to us, all of us, everyone, which their practical experience only shall reveal. So this universal prayer also adds a lot of you know changes. It brings a lot of changes, and I realize this brotherhood, universal brotherhood in my heart. All prejudices must drop. All other aspects must drop, and this evolution happens as it should. And you will also see an immense change happens in the atmosphere around us, around across the globe, when everyone is practicing sincerely. So this has to be a collective effort to make it happen. Everyone at their local time, 9 p.m., sit and meditate. So our masters have said, when you do it, that means the prayer is happening 24 hours. There is a 9 p.m. always in some part of the world in the 24 hours. So the 24 hours, this prayer is covered if everyone is doing sincerely. So that is the aspect of 9 p.m. prayer. Almost 1 minute. I'm not done yet. So now prayers, praying for others. Yesterday I was talking to Nori and then I said, my parents' situation, I should pray for them. What is praying for others means really? And how do you pray for others? For their health or other benefits? It is the same thing again. You put the problem in front of the master, this divine principle, and say, okay, you guide in whichever way you find it the right thing to happen. Then whatever happens, I accept it. So here I'm not forcing the results, because if I know the result already, the prayer doesn't work. That is why the most effective prayer, Lalaji said, is when you are utterly become helpless. That means you have no capacity to help the situation, help yourself. And in that despair, that when that request to the Lord happens, to that divine principle happens, in whichever the form, doesn't matter. That will be fulfilled by the divine principle. So I'm totally helpless, and it definitely happens. So that is why we become so sublime, we become so submissive, and we create that helpless state and put that forth. If suppose say, if a spiritual master says, I am the spiritual master, the God, Lord, better listen to me, it doesn't happen. Even the spiritual master also has to come to this helpless state and pray as a normal being. So you might ask, to which master the spiritual master is praying to? We saw Jesus is praying. To whom is he praying to? When they are praying, they're praying to their own higher self. And that higher self probably, whatever, Jesus said, Father in the heaven. Daji will say, my higher masters, all the higher masters. When Babaji was praying, he said, all my higher masters, let them help. Let the help come. But whoever is praying, they have to come to this normal, even below human level, and submit that prayer. You cannot say, oh, I am the great devotee, you better fulfill my request. It doesn't work. So that's what praying for others really means. About life situations, I mean, there are, suppose, I am going through health situation, job situation. Here comes a technique. How the techniques are discovered in our system, right? So let's say you are, you're supposed to attend a meeting, interview, or a life situation. Observe where that fear or that uncertainty is concentrated in your system. Whenever there is an uncertainty, you will see that concentration happens around your navel area. Bring your attention there and pray from there. It gets cleared. One technique. So like that, for life situations, you can apply some techniques. But the best technique is, Lord, you take care of it, and I am here helpless, and you submit, it happens. No techniques required. And the last but the least, praying for the lottery. When I win the lottery, I'll tell you if the prayer worked. So repeat the technique. Any technique is, you observe where the disturbance, uncertainty is happening in your system. Bring your attention to that point and submit it to this higher essence. And that situation, you will see, gets cleared instantly. That uncertainty gets cleared instantly from your system. This about this lottery. Once we were at the airport, and that time I don't even know there is something called lottery exists, right? And she gave a paper to Chariji, and Chariji said, "What is this?" She said, "A lottery." So Chariji said, "Are you giving this to me?" No, no, no. I want you to bless it. So he said, "If I can bless you, I will buy the lottery myself." So how uh, we make the blessings and prayers silly. We bring it to the silly level, a silly state. That's called fooling around. We fool around. So that's why prayer is a very profound, very intense activity. Okay, we still, I mean, I can, still talk. Please share any comments, anything you want to discuss, anything you want to share, or any questions, and then we can end the call.
Shirkan, I have a question about the communication part, the prayer. So still a little bit unclear to me what or who I'm trying to communicate with, because considering the fact that we believe that the higher essence or God has no mind, so how am I communicating with that entity?
See, suppose in your mind, in our mind, we talk to so many things. You had some difference with the boss. You're arguing with your boss in your mind, don't you? That means in certain way you're communicating with your boss. We did it, I mean, all the time in normal situations. We communicate with your friends. If I have to propose the girl, how many times I communicate that proposal in my mind before even I utter it. So this inner communication with whoever you think of, you need to communicate, is happening in certain form or way in your system, and then you put that into words. We are slightly reversing this process. We have these words to communicate to this higher entity. And we are putting this forth as our inner need. And as we recognize it, that becomes very natural. And then that communication is happening. When the inner need is felt, that communication is happening. Just like how we are doing it mentally with everyone. Same thing here. See, I mean, this spirituality is everything is already there. We just need to exercise it. That's why spiritual practice is simple. If anyone thinks spiritual practice is hard, they misunderstood it. It's all very natural. We are doing it with everyone all the time. We just replacing that entity with something else, something ennobling, something bigger than us. That's all it is. I mean, it's same thing. We have done it many times. Even we communicate with our presidents in our mind when they do something wrong or when they do something great, right? Same thing here. That's the communication we are talking about. But since this entity is associated consciously with the divine presence, then the prayer reaches, definitely. But if I communicate with my boss mentally, that my communication doesn't reach my boss because that other entity is not ready to receive my communication. But this entity is ever ready to receive our communication. The communication is what? I'm expressing myself. That is what the communication is, right? So that expression is taking in this prayer, the expression itself is taking a very subtle form so that it becomes potent. The stronger the expression, the most ineffective it becomes. All right. Thank you for asking the question.
Shrikant, we can wrap up or we can take one more question. And
Yeah, I mean, if there are any questions, otherwise we can wrap it up. All right, going once, twice, thrice. Okay, why is it against to pray prior to meditation? Group meditation, individual meditation. Why? Because so the trainer who is giving a sitting is already making that connection. Here, connection is synonymous to communication, right? So that is why that connection is already made. So there is no need for you to make the connection again. That is why during the individual sessions and group sessions, there is no need to pray. But when I am meditating myself, I make that connection. And when you are meditating yourself, you make that connection through the prayer and continue the meditation. All right, why does it have to be a subtlest request? Because this entity is subtle. If I have to communicate with another person, there are ways I can communicate, right? I have to make some sound loud enough for the other person to hear it. Sometimes we can communicate through the expressions if that person is looking at me. There are many ways to communicate. For that, the other entity to react, act, sync with you. But this being the most subtlest entity, the divine principle of the master, our request also has to be subtle. We have to match the frequency of the receiving entity, right? When that request has to reach, it has to be subtle. Hope that answers. All right. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. Thank you for participating. And again, we all meet in our next session, 2 p.m. Sunday next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much.